have to say that I'm very troubled by tonight's event. When I accepted the invitation to come here, I wasn't quite as aware as I am now of the nature of the organisation which is sponsoring it. I certainly know that the authorities which run the Royal College of Physicians of Ireland also were not as aware as they are now, and they're not a whole lot happier than I am about this, and I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit more about that part of the story. The IEA, I just want to say at the outset, will have you believe that their position here tonight is also anti-smoking and that they are on our side in the campaign against the scourge of premature illness and death which occurs as a result of smoking, but that they merely have a different strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, I will leave it to you to decide by the end of my talk and by the end of the evening whether that contention is plausible. The show tonight, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, is all about the big lies. Big lie number one, which was systematically propagated by big tobacco until comparatively recently, is that there is still some lingering doubt over the cancer-causing and other health consequences of tobacco. Ladies and gentlemen, this is tosh, it's nonsense, everybody knows it at this stage. Lung cancer is an extremely uncommon disease in lifelong non-smokers. The overwhelming majority, not all, but the overwhelming majority of lung cancer cases are caused by direct cigarette smoking. It's the commonest cause of cancer death in men and the commonest cause of cancer death in women in Ireland and other developed countries. Very tellingly, it must be noted that it was quite an uncommon cause of cancer death in women until about the 2/3, 3/4 into the last century, when the effect of large numbers of women taking up smoking around the time of the Second World War in the 1950s kicked in with a typical 20-year time lag. Ladies and gentlemen, somebody said that statistics are human beings with the tears wiped off, and I can tell you I've seen far too many people that I've had to give the really bad news to, that tobacco unfortunately was going to take them away from their own children, from their siblings, sometimes from their parents that were young enough to have that happen. And anything we can do to end that is something which we need to do. From the time of the very first compelling data about the effect of tobacco in causing cancer, and this is not new, this is back to the 1940s and 1950s, a linkage which was originally shown in British and American data, which was subsequently confirmed in multiple large studies around the world, data which was also substantiated by a large body of laboratory work which showed that the chemicals present in cigarette smoke were direct cancer-causing chemicals. The industry has attempted to discredit these facts. Chillingly, released documents from the industry show that they did this knowingly. They knew the link, they denied the link. They in fact hired, as far back as the 1950s and 1960s, PR companies, which they're doing tonight, and indirectly, and advertising agencies in an attempt to get the message out that no, there's real doubt about this. Perhaps smoking doesn't have any health effects and does not cause cancer. And one of the more obscured, I should say absurd illustrations of the lengths that they would go to came from the court case of Mary Chippewa, who was a woman who sadly in her middle years developed lung cancer from a lifetime of smoking cigarettes, a habit developed as a child, cigarette addict in her teens. And she, and after her death, her family, decided to pursue the tobacco companies legally for their role in her death. And they had a very good lawyer, a man called Mr. Edel, who did a wonderful process of discovery, which was the first big unearthing of the actual figures, of the actual documents which were present in the tobacco companies' vaults. And when Edel was cross-examining one of the tobacco company executives, he said, you know, I've come across documents which show that your company in your labs did experiments which showed that the products, the tar products of tobacco smoke could cause cancer in laboratory animals. And he said, that's correct. And he said, then why did you continue studying the product? He said, because it had nothing to do with people. And Edel said to him, so you didn't think that there might be a link with people? And he said, no, we just did it to see what would happen in rats. And he then said, well, did that mean that you were concerned about the health consequences of tobacco in rats? And he said, yes, we are. Case answered. One could sort of understand this argument, okay, if they genuinely doubted it at a time when shocking new evidence was coming out which showed that the whole economic basis of their industry was under threat, if they didn't know it. But they knew it very deliberately. These people encouraged youngsters to become addicted to the product they sold in the sure and certain knowledge, as our own Minister James Riley has said, that if the product was used exactly as they instructed people to use it, it would approximately 50% of the time result in their premature death. And ladies and gentlemen, they did this in the full knowledge of what their product would do to people, and they did it for personal financial gain. Now, if somebody can tell me a purer example of corporate evil, I'd love to hear it, because I can't think of one off the top of my head. Tobacco, big lie number 2, was that their product was not addictive and that people continued to consume it out of their own free will. Far from being ignorant of the profoundly addictive qualities of nicotine, the evidence is clear that the companies acted to enhance these addictive qualities by increasing the nicotine content. You know, you have to ask yourself sometimes, who are they trying to fool? Thomas E. Sandefur, who at the time was the chairman and the CEO of B&W Tobacco, testified to the U.S. House of Representatives, to the House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee nearly 20 years ago now, in 1994, and stated, with his hand in the air, "I believe that nicotine is not addictive." Yet 12 years previously, in 1982, B&W's own internal documents, which were aimed at trying to change the markets so that people would switch brands to their brands, stated that nicotine is the addicting component of cigarettes. The reason that the company stopped pushing these big lies is not because they had some colossal near-deathbed conversion to the path of rectitude. It's because the sheer implausibility of what they were saying made them look dumb. And it was too easy to pick holes in what they were saying. So when there are multi-million-dollar lawyers and PR companies and phony think tanks then advise them that a strategy of denial of the health benefits wouldn't work, they then change tack. They would now say actually what they were campaigners for civil liberties. They were Mandelas. They were there trying to free people who were oppressed by by governments, poor smokers, to enable them to have their God-given right to give themselves cancer with an addictive chemical that they happen to be making. The next big lie, and there's one that got into our newspapers today, is that public health initiatives do not affect smoking rates. At the time of the first publication of the US Surgeon General's report in 1964, nearly 50% of Americans smoked. Nearly 50%, okay? That was the high water mark. And maybe it was complete coincidence, but after the Surgeon General's report, which led to the ban on advertising, which led to the health warnings, which led to the gradual ratcheting of pressure on the practice of smoking, American smoking rates entered a steep decline, and they've declined ever since, from nearly 50% down to 20%. This was government action which did this. And by the way, lest somebody think that I'm some kind of a crazy big government type, I believe in a mixed government. I have certain sympathies with libertarianism in certain issues. But on this one, no. Governments have an absolute obligation to act in the public health. And acting in the public health here meant warning people about cigarettes and curtailing the abilities of the companies to make new addicts out of our children. Our opponents would have you believe that this decline was coincidence, that in fact smoking cessation legislation doesn't work. And contrary to Mr. Snowden's article today, in which he stated that the number of smokers in Ireland had plateaued, it has not. The number of smokers has declined from 33% in 1998 to 29% in 2007, to which I'm sure Micheál Martin's very visionary smoking in the workplace ban contributed. And it has further declined since 2007 from 29% to 22%. These are official figures from the Office of Tobacco Control. The number of 16-year-olds at that time that smoked has gone down from 41% to 21%. So, ladies and gentlemen, we could all just leave now. Action works, okay? And it's absurd to say that it doesn't. When Australia brought in plain packaging, there was an immediate increase in calls to the quit helplines of the cancer charities. Intriguingly, people started calling the companies and stating that their cigarettes tasted different. Were they putting something different in it? Telling you that there's a powerful impact from changing to plain brands. The companies had to put out a reassuring statement, reassuring customers that it was the same old cancer-causing chemicals they always sold. They weren't giving any different ones just because the packages had become plain. Research has shown that plain packaging decreases the ability to mislead, and it also increases the impact of health warnings. And if you're looking for a metric of outcome, Imperial Tobacco themselves have stated that since plain packaging had come in, there was already a 2 to 3% drop in the sales of their cigarettes in Australia. So again, this works, and we should be extraordinarily supportive of it here. The industry understands that its market is shrinking in educated, sophisticated countries, and that increasing their bottom line will depend entirely on sales in poor developing countries. Their opponents in this effort are the United Nations, especially its World Health Organization, and other international agencies which have the public good and public health at heart. So they try to subvert them. Fred Panzer, who was the public relations officer of the Tobacco Research Institute, in disclosed documents stated 20 years ago that the industry should create doubts, demand further evidence about the cause of smoking-related cancer, and finally to suggest that they should begin to advocate for the rights of smokers. And ladies and gentlemen, that's where the IEA come in. The IEA are partly funded by the tobacco industry. And you know, somehow the notion that this is some kind of rugged, kind of fringe group of Amnesty International who are fighting for the rights of the little guy to be able to have cigarettes in the face of the Goliath of big government is tosh. In 1995, Mr. Blundell, General Chief Executive of the IEA, contacted the Tobacco Institute, who parenthetically were the umbrella group when the American tobacco industry realized that the health data were putting them under collective and colossal pressure. They put their separate corporate ambitions parked to one side and acted together in defense of the habit of smoking so that their market for all of them would survive. So Mr. Blundell from the IEA contacted the Tobacco Institute to tell them, and I quote, "The IEA offers a tremendous strategic advantage to the tobacco Institute. You will find our work has a significant impact on US and international policy." Let's think for a second. What was US policy? US policy was to decrease the number of people who were dying an agonizing death at the time from lung cancer because of the product that this gentleman was offering to help. That's what it was, and that's who we're dealing with. The IEA in 1987 thanked British American Tobacco for being amongst our strongest supporters over the years. In 1985, the IEA's Lord Harris, who subsequently became the chairman of Forest, which is a tobacco industry-supported lobbying group, quote-unquote, on behalf of the rights of smokers, wrote to British American Tobacco, asking it to join our top subscribers. In 2002, it was revealed that the writer and philosopher Scruton, who wrote a pamphlet attacking the WHO for its anti-tobacco campaign, was on the payroll of Japan Tobacco International. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will let you form your own opinions on this, but if the IEA came into our college, my college, of which I'm proud to be a fellow and a member, had to work quite hard to become a member of this institution many years ago, an institution which is dedicated to advancing health, to decreasing the burden of disease, to beating cancer and heart disease, an institute which has one of its core values fervent opposition to the tobacco industry, which has divested itself not only from companies which have tobacco interests, but which deal with companies that have tobacco interests. I can tell you right now, I spoke to the vice president of the college tonight, and he spoke to the president, Professor John Crow, and there will be somebody at this venue having been used by this organization for this meeting tonight. Because I, for one, and you can make your own opinion on this, do not believe that the IEA, okay, that their primary goal tonight is to decrease the burden of smoking by advancing an alternative agenda. If it was, why would the industry give them money? Why would the industry support an organization whose stated goal, if what we're going to hear is correct, is to reduce the consumption of their product? It's not plausible. So, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, the comprehensive rap sheet against this industry is unprecedented in the world of legal business. They have consistently and by their own stated policy repeated that their only ambition is to sell cigarettes. The only constituency to which they answer is their shareholders, and the means by which they keep that constituency happy is to sell more cigarettes while they know that they're increasing the risk of premature death and other illnesses. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that we need a multi-pronged approach to dealing with the tobacco policy. I believe, in the first instance, I sincerely hope that the government, as they've stated that they will do, will agree to get my bill advanced, which would my bill together with Senators Mark Daly and Julian Van Turnhout ban smoking in cars where children are present. I am also going to look very carefully in the next few months at the possibility of legislation to try and rein in the activities of the lobbyists, the hired guns who work for the tobacco industry. And my ultimate belief is that we should declare that this product, which if it were invented today, would never be legal. I mean, it's extraordinary. You hear about products being pulled from shelves that might be some small component of the cover of a refrigerator because there is some evidence that in megadoses it caused cancer in rats. And we have this product which absolutely definitely will kill 1/2 of its users, which dramatically increases the rate of cancer, and the only reason it's there is because we've been doing it for so long. But I believe that should change. I believe we should tell the companies that as The thing that sustains their business now is the profit motive. The profit motive of creating new addicts. Remember the core business plan of a tobacco company. Addict children to carcinogens. That's it. That's what their business plan can be summarized as. That they have a powerful financial incentive to addict children to carcinogens now. We need to remove their profit motive. I believe we need to give them a lot of advance warning on how we're going to do it, but I believe that we should, as a community of civilized nations, decide that that will be our policy. Thank you very much.